What's up, you guys? I wanted to make a quick update video to this video I made last week where I said I was feeling nervous to go back and senior as the senior resident on the day team. And I wanted to go and look at how my week went and just kind of reflect a little bit because I think it's useful to actually kind of analyze how things went and, maybe improve a little bit more for the next time. So here's kind of things that I had written about last time or last week. And first of all, I think it was really helpful to go in with a game plan. I feel like it helped me establish what I wanted to get out of the rotation, what I was hoping to achieve with my team and the interns for this rotation. And so that's one thing I would encourage people to do is to try this out. You don't need to do this every single time you're being a senior on a rotation, but for me, I think it helped me orient myself towards what my goals were a little bit better because I think for my last CCU rotation where I didn't do as well, I think I didn't have very clear goals of what I wanted to achieve out of the rotation, and that's why I didn't go as well. So here are some of the things I wrote. I wanted to primarily do bedside rounds. I wanted to get everyone home on time. I wanted to ask them how autonomous they would be. And then I wanted to give feedback and do a personal and professional goal. Keep rounds less than 2 hours, have concise presentations, all that kind of stuff. So how did things go? So first of all, in terms of the bedside rounds, we did end up actually doing bedside rounds for every single patient. And I actually felt like overall it went pretty well. For me, it was enjoyable. I think there were some things that could have been better, in terms of the workflow of it. It wasn't as smooth as when I was at UC Davis, where we had the WOW or the workstation on wheels, and we could just go to every single patient's room and I could put in orders while we were walking and things like that. At Kaiser, most of the patients' rooms did have a computer, so I was able to pull things up, but it was just a little bit of a hiccup in the workflow that made it a little bit less smooth. And then sometimes when the computer was not available, I was not able to pull up the imaging or the labs or things like that. And I really like being able to pull up the vitals and the lab results and the imaging while the intern is presenting, because it really helps all of us be oriented to what's actually going on, and the attending can take a look and see what's going on as well with the patient. We can see the trends a lot better. So that was one little small hiccup. In terms of getting everybody home on time, I definitely achieved that. And, that's one thing that I feel like I've been pretty good at doing most of the time. Both of the interns didn't stay until sign out a single time. I got them out about 2 hours before sign out every day. And I think they definitely enjoyed that. And this wasn't with me, taking over a bunch of tasks for them and doing a bunch of things for them. I actually feel like both of the interns were pretty autonomous during this rotation. And I actually had asked them how autonomous they would like to be. And kind of what I got was they wanted to write their own admit orders and do discharge orders and stuff. And at the end of the rotation, I actually had them just go see patients and, take the H&P on their own, because it just improved the workflow that way. And that's how much I started to trust them at the end of it. They definitely were fantastic interns and did a great job in this rotation. One thing that I found particularly helpful, and I think that the interns really liked too, was I actually had this old Kaiser guide that I had written, and it just basically had screenshots of how to do all the admission orders, discharge orders, how to consult people and page consultants and things like that. And basically, the first time they were doing an admission, I went over the whole process with them. I just sat next to them and we went through the whole order set. But then after that, they had this piece of paper that they could refer back to anytime they needed to. So when they were doing admission orders later, I think it really helped them be able to do it on their own, and I didn't have to sit with them again to do the admission. When I was doing orders for them, I tried to not do too many orders, and I wanted to, every time I did an order, make sure I updated them and told them that I was doing an order. I think that was one of the problems with my CCU rotation, is that I was doing too many orders, writing too many notes and stuff, and then not telling the interns that I was doing it. And now that the more that I think back at that, I feel really cringy about doing some of the progress notes for the interns without telling them. That was definitely, I think that was overstepping my role as a senior, definitely. But again, I did it all because I want to make sure the interns get home at a reasonable time. In terms of feedback, we did do some feedback. And again, I'm still not that great at giving negative feedback, but they both did really such a good job that I didn't have really negative feedback to give, other than a little bit of constructive feedback, such as some things I thought one of the interns could optimize on their presentations, and the other intern I think had a little bit of less enthusiasm about the bedside rounds. 2 days into it, I was like, hey, how is this working for your workflow? Do you like how bedside rounds are, or do you like how rounds are going as they are right now? And I was very actually, appreciative of how honest they were with me. They're like, actually, I don't really like the bedside rounds that much. And I definitely took that to heart. But I actually was kind of saddened by it, because I was like, man, I want to make this like a fun experience for them. I was hoping, we could make it a good process. And still, I feel like it's such a valuable thing to do because I really feel like it's doubling your clinical volume and learning without doubling your work. Getting to see your other interns' patients, see how their hospital courses go and how the management steps are made, I feel like is a very useful learning opportunity. Plus, our attending was doing really, really great physical exam stuff and teaching. And he was even doing stuff that, I felt pretty weak on. Like, I always want to improve my neuro exam, and seeing all the steps that he did and all the tests that he did was useful for me. So I can only imagine how useful it is for an intern. And I think that's one of the reasons our physical exam is just getting worse all the time, is because we're not doing these bedside rounds anymore and practicing these physical exam skills. Now, you can argue about the utility of whether all these physical exam maneuvers are really useful anymore, but I still feel like, seeing an experienced attending and seeing how they evaluate somebody's weakness or their altered mental status or their recurrent falls or something, I felt very helpful. I felt like it was very useful for me. And I also remember when I was an intern, I kind of got bored with just the 6 to 7 or 8 patients that I was carrying. And, it felt like I could learn more by seeing the other patients, other interns' patients as well. So again, this intern basically said they didn't like how rounds were going. And so I kind of compromised a little bit. It's understandable. And but basically, I tried to finish that intern's patients first so I could just send them to the workroom to get their work done. Also, if the other intern was presenting, then I would have the one that didn't like rounds, I would just let them go and, go to the nurse's station and start working on notes and stuff. And I think it was a nice compromise overall, and it helped improve that intern's workflow. I don't disagree that it can be more efficient and faster if you, do all of one intern's patients all at once while the other intern is just like working on their notes or whatever. And then you just ignore that intern and just go to the next intern and present all of their patients, and the other intern can start working on their notes and orders and stuff. So that definitely is probably more efficient for everybody's workflow. But I do feel like you are missing out a lot on a lot of learning and, just knowledge that could be gained by listening in and understanding the other interns' patients. In terms of rounds lasting less than 2 hours, most of the time we were less than 2 hours. So I think we were very effective with that. A couple times we went to 2.5 hours, and, I think it's a little bit attending dependent. Some of them are going to spend a little bit more time with the patients and ask a few more questions. But overall, I think we stayed within that goal. And then this last one, the personal and professional goal, I actually didn't do. I thought, I was only spending about 4 days with these interns, so we decided not to do that. But overall, I think it did go well. I think I really did benefit from establishing some of these goals that I wanted to do before going into this rotation, and it helped me accomplish what I wanted to and get what I wanted to out of this rotation. So for all of you guys who are going into senioring and want to develop your skills as a senior, I'm not perfect at this. I'm still working on it. I feel like there's a lot more things that I could do, but this is definitely a strategy that I found helpful. And so maybe something that you should consider before your next rotation, especially if you're trying to make the most out of that rotation and make it the best experience for your attending and your interns and the whole team in general. There's another thing I wanted to briefly discuss a little bit is that one thing out of this rotation that was a little difficult for me was we had one patient that we ended up doing a lot of goals of care conversations on for multiple days. They had like multi-organ failure. They had worsening respiratory failure and not eating anything. They were basically sleeping all the time. And so I eventually had this big family conversation, this goals of care meeting, and we ended up making that patient comfort care. But, it took 2 or 3 days to get everybody coordinated to, come to this family meeting. And, as it happened, the patient ended up being clinically quite a bit better by the time we had this family meeting. Like, their oxygen requirement had improved. They're basically on room air. And one of the things I was wondering during this rotation was like, man, did I kind of time that wrong, or did I not make the right decision there? Because the patient ultimately did end up going comfort care, and it just felt like a little bit, not ideal, because it was like, oh, the patient's actually like clinically getting better right now. It's like kind of feels sad that we're going comfort care this time. But I fully let the family know, like, it is totally reasonable to just, keep the patient on dialysis or whatever and let them do, just see how the patient improves over the next few days. And, the more I thought about it, I was like, this patient had so many comorbidities. The chance of them ever making a full recovery to their prior baseline was very, very low, especially because they were not tolerating any oral intake at all. They were just sleeping all day. And their prior baseline was honestly didn't seem like a great quality of life for them anyways. So I think in the end, we did make the right decision. I think the family made the right decision for the patient. But it was one that was just a little bit sad for me because it was kind of like, gosh, it just felt unfortunate that the patient clinically was actually getting a little bit better. And then, we made them comfort care and they passed a few days later. I just thought I'd throw that in there because that was one other big takeaway from this rotation for me was, going through that process and basically doing a whole goals of care discussion on my own because we actually consulted palliative care. They kind of helped out a little bit, but then they were super, super busy. So we basically just did all the whole goals of care things ourselves. And that actually was pretty nice for me because I felt like I was able to use some of those skills myself and grow in that aspect a little bit. I really use that serious illness conversation guide, and I really recommend everybody take a look at that if they're going to be doing any goals of care or family conversations. But you just search serious illness conversation guide, and then you look up this chart that they give you, and they give you a lot of good wording that you can use with patients and their families in order to kind of get them to understand things from the doctor's perspective as well as from the patient's perspective and try to come up with the best plan in terms of what the patient would want and what would most fit in with their wishes and their goals. So anyways, that's about it. I hope this video was helpful and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks again for watching and peace.